When you think of Oasis, the first thing you probably think of is the Gallagher brothers. Then after this comes the songs, and right at the front of every one of those tracks, well most of them, stands Liam Gallagher. Whether you love him or hate him, he's one of the most recognisable voices in British music. But there's always been one question hanging over him really. Is Liam Gallagher actually a good songwriter? Because those Oasis hits that you're thinking of were more often than not written by Noel, who is seen as more of the creative mind behind the band's tunes. But what about Liam? Did he actually write any Oasis songs? If he did, objectively, was he any good at it? And should we maybe give him a bit more credit for Oasis' songwriting? Let's see. When Oasis exploded onto the scene in the early 90s, they weren't just another Britpop band. They became Britpop. The band's attitude, unbreakable confidence, and the anthems about cigarettes and alcohol defined the genre and made them the voice of the 90s generation in the UK. But behind all that attitude, there was impressive creativity. But who was it from? When Liam joined the band and renamed them Oasis, they were more of a scrappy local pub band than a stadium filler, as you can imagine. This would all change one night when Noel would go to see his little brother play, and he was impressed. After this, Noel approached the band and offered to join them on one very clear condition. He would write everything. Every chord progression, every lyric, and every melody. It would all be in Noel's vision. I know what you're thinking. Why would they agree to that? Well, the band agreed because deep down they knew they needed it, as their music at the time was more akin to aggressive noise than the tracks we associate with them now. And that's in their own words, not mine. And look, if you were moving from making noise to instant ready-made classics like Live Forever and Supersonic, which Noel had already written, you really don't have anything to complain about. And with that decision, Oasis took off, on Noel's songwriting and Liam's natural ability to front a band. Essentially, one was the architect and the other was the grafter, if you will. It worked perfectly, but how long could that last before Liam wanted to have a go himself? The question is, why change something that is clearly working? And the formula of Noel writing everything and Liam fronting the band had propelled Oasis to insane heights. They'd gone from council estate lads with guitars to possibly the biggest band in the world, and it was practically overnight. Their albums were topping the UK charts, their singles followed suit, and they were selling out every tour, and also headlining massive festivals, which is every band's dream. But of course, this is Oasis we're talking about, so nothing's ever easy. As the albums rolled on, Noel's dominance over the creative process continued, but in the background, Liam wasn't content with just being the face of the band anymore. He wanted to contribute to the songwriting process too. Beneath the sunglasses and the attitude, there was a genuine desire to create. It's no surprise really, he'd been living and breathing these songs Noel had written, performing them night after night, so naturally it was only time till he started thinking, why shouldn't I ever go at writing one myself? Which is fair enough, and he eventually did. It's crazy really because the first time Liam had credit on an Oasis song was Little James from the album Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, which means it took 4 albums before anyone but Noel wrote a track. So props to him for that mental output. Written for his stepson at the time, it's a sweet, childlike song. It's definitely heartfelt, but if I'm being honest, it's awkward. You can't listen to it, I mean I certainly can't, without cringing. Lines like, live for your toys, even though they make noise, have you ever played with plasticine, ever tried a trampoline, are as shallow as they come. There's no deeper meaning to be found there. From this, you can tell it comes from an inexperienced songwriter. Add on to this the song's simple structure and the chord pattern, which is even simpler. It's literally 3 chords on repeat. You know it's not the best. Critics weren't kind to it either, there's no shock there. And to be fair, I'm not being very nice to it now.
You're mean.
However, Little James does do something. It marked a turning point. It showed that Liam was starting to care about the music to another level. And look, we all have to start somewhere. So it's safe to say from the outset, he wasn't naturally talented at songwriting, like his big bro. But would it get better from here? You know what? Liam slowly began to build confidence as a songwriter, and you can trace a clear development across Oasis' final albums. On Heathen Chemistry, Liam actually gets 3 songwriting credits, which is a 300% increase on the last album. These songs include Songbird, Born on a Different Cloud, and Better Man, and they show him experimenting with different structures and more tones, which is what was needed. These tracks are definitely more simple and straight to the point rather than Noel's work. They're not big Britpop anthems and crowd pleasers, but they're far better than Little James. Born on a Different Cloud is anthemic, the title acts as a hook throughout the song, and it really resonates in the way that a good hook should. The guitars are better too, they're nicely balanced with the acoustics drumming the chords of the song, while it's also being layered with an electric that infuses the song with some fantastic melodies. Better Man gives you this rocky riff that hits straight away. It hits me as a bit of a classic rock track to be fair. and the guitar wouldn't sound out of place in the 1970s. It feels very Zeppelin inspired, like something that could have been on Presence era Zepp. The highlight for Liam, however, is Songbird, because arguably it's the moment where Liam kind of finds his songwriting identity. It's a simple acoustic ballad written for his partner at the time, and it's stripped back, honest and straightforward in a good way. There's no overproduction, there's no overthinking of things, just pure honesty. But this time, he's not hitting you with these obtusely on-the-nose lyrics anymore, and instead, you can tell he's trying to put some craft into them. And funnily enough, that's what made it work. Fans loved it because it sounded like Liam, raw, direct, and pretty unfiltered, and it made it to 3 in the UK singles charts. If we skip forward to their album, Dig Out Your Soul, Liam's songwriting had clearly evolved into something genuinely good. Tracks like I'm Out of Time, which was inspired by John Lennon and includes a sample of him, showed a more reflective, mature side of him. It was melodic and heartfelt at the same time, but it shows him reaching a level that no one really expected from Liam. It takes the band back to their roots and their inspirations, with a track that feels like a lost Beatles recording, which is a testament to the progression of Liam's songwriting. At this point, the songwriting duties were almost evenly split. Liam had come a long way from Little James, that's for sure, proving he was capable of crafting songs with real depth and emotion now. But as mentioned, that would be Oasis's last album. So with him now creating Beady Eye and going solo, we can take a look at his songwriting without Noel's influence. Will it get better? Will it reach another level? Let's see. Before we do, I just want to say thank you to everyone who is currently subscribed for 1k subs. It genuinely means the world to me that people have enjoyed my ramblings enough to do so. If you are enjoying this vid, a sub would be legendary. Anyway, enough about me. After Oasis's split, Liam didn't waste any time being creative again. He basically reassembled half of Oasis and formed the band Beady Eye. Their debut album, Different Gear, Still Speeding, dropped in 2011. And you know what? It wasn't that bad. It had moments that genuinely worked. Tracks like The Roller and Four Letter Word are solid, but you could feel the Oasis influence still in the music. It was kind of like you had ordered Oasis on Temu. It had the same sound and the same sort of style, but it was missing that premium edge, if you get what I mean. The songwriting wasn't as sharp, and the hooks didn't quite land as cleanly, but it felt pretty much like you had swapped the creative control in Oasis, and honestly, it was probably the moment we learned why Noel was the primary songwriter in the band. Not to discredit Liam though, as he clearly was giving it a real go, and let's not forget, he wasn't really writing alone here, as Gem Archer and Andy Bell were both chipping in with tracks too. Beady Eye's second album BE then came in 2013, and it was definitely a change. It was produced by Dave Sitek from TV on the Radio, and it came out more polished, and it definitely worked to give the album a different edge to their debut, but it wasn't quite all there. Songs like Flick of the Finger and Start Anew showed Liam was pushing himself a bit more and was certainly trying to stand out on his own rather than just rehash Oasis sounds. It's not perfect, but there's a clear development here. Of course reviewers were still mixed on it, but it's undeniable BE showed growth. Ultimately, Beady Eye as a project felt stuck in a rut, and it was probably time to call it a day on the Oasis sound. Then came Liam Gallagher's solo stuff. 2017's As You Were was definitely Liam at his best since Oasis. He had fully stepped out of that creative rut and moved into creating pop rock tracks. Everything sounded catchy and played into his aggressive delivery and cool as can be public image. But there's a caveat here. It may have been a solo project, but he didn't write it entirely alone. For this album, he worked with Andrew Wyatt and Greg Kurstin for the singles, both of who are Grammy Award winning songwriters. Essentially, you couldn't pick a better crew to give you a ready-made hit. However, Liam did contribute to the song's creation, and therefore, we can maybe discount sole credit, but we can still attribute some merit to it. And he had definitely gotten better. I mean, especially since Little James. Wall of Glass really is a hit, although again, this had involvement from all writers, so that might be why. For what it's worth, shows some real reflection, and where Liam lacked the anthemic edge in Oasis, this ticks that box and acts as a real, see, I can do it, to all of us. So yeah, there's some really great cases of songwriting here. The album was a big success, and critics loved it. Liam's fans loved it as well, and it went a long way to proving that Liam could exist away from the Oasis formula. It turns out he just needed time, and a few other writers, to find his own voice. Yeah, I can see the irony in that sentence. 2019, he followed it up with Why Me, Why Not, which honestly just built on the success. It's a bit glossier, it gives a little bit of evolution, and it perfectly matches Liam's personality. Look, the songwriters I mentioned for As You Were are featured on nearly every song here, which you may think detracts from his ability as a songwriter, but I think in this case they are employed to add what is probably much needed musicianship, as we've seen from Liam's guitar playing, and to help steer him into playing to his strengths, and for that, it's harsh to knock him. He does have a third album too, which is Come On You Know. But look, I think by that time, we've had 3 albums of Liam's, which don't particularly alter the formula he's found. So to make sure I'm not repeating myself, here's what I think of his solo stuff. The TLDR is the songs are great, but they're pop songs by pop writers for a Britpop singer. They do their job, but for the sake of our argument, it's still kind of unclear if they contribute to the question we're trying to get to the bottom of, because we don't have any certainty on the level of contribution. What I do have to say at this point is that Liam Gallagher has become one of Britain's most consistent songwriters on the basis of output alone. The question then that we posed is, after 3 decades of music, is Liam Gallagher a good songwriter? If we look at all the evidence we have, do I think Liam Gallagher is a top songwriter? No, I don't.
Come on then.
Hold on a second. Do I think he is a decent songwriter? Yes, of course he is. Look, we all know when most people think of Oasis, they think of Noel's tracks. Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, Champagne Supernova. I mean, it's hard to compete with that. And Liam's songwriting always and probably always will exist in its shadow. He's not the most technical and he's not the most poetic, but often that's not the point of his music. Liam writes the way he has always been, emotional and honest. He doesn't hide behind wordplay or metaphors. What you hear in this case is what you get. Liam's solo work has more often than not fared better than his songwriting with Oasis, and that's probably down to the number of reps he's had. His solo albums, including As You Were and Why Me, Why Not, have received critical acclaim and are enjoyed by his fans, and this is a testament to the singer's progress as a songwriter. Either way, I think people often overlook how much Liam's presence actually shaped the Oasis tracks too. He might not have written them, but his interpretation and his phrasing and his delivery was what made them resonate, and of course, that in a way is songwriting in its own right. Maybe I'm clutching at straws here. If we go by the main criteria of songwriting bit by bit, are his melodies good? Yeah, they may be simple, but they're catchy, they stick in your head, so that's a pass. Are his lyrics any good? To start with, no. Sailed out to sea, you, your mum and me, is not a good line. But he took this and he got better. Wall of Glass is almost unrecognisable as the same songwriter. So yes, for his work since 2002, it's a pass. What about structures? I mean, they're simple. And in this case, it's probably not a pass, as sometimes they're still too simple. Then what about his musicianship? I mean, here he has a lot of help, so it's probably not a pass for the Oasis frontman. I'll shut up and get on with it, shall I? So, is Liam a good songwriter? Look, Liam might not be a songwriter on the level of John Lennon or Bob Dylan, or even Noel, but he's certainly earned the right to be classified as a singer-songwriter, where in 2002, he clearly wasn't. So yeah, sure, he's a decent songwriter. He won't be in the GOAT conversations anytime soon. At the end of it all, he's crafted hits that have charted, he's sold out tours, and he's currently back with Oasis, manning one of the biggest tours of all time. So he won't care about what I, or any of us have to say. And will he care that he's not credited with the greats? Of course he won't. It's Liam Gallagher. Either way, let me know what your verdict is below. Thanks for watching.